The Nexus chamber hummed with the collective anxiety of 47 species. Located at the geometric center of the galaxy, the massive spherical room could accommodate beings of every imaginable form. Today, representatives floated, coiled, and perched in their designated zones, all focused on the central platform where Ambassador Thylex stood motionless. Thylex belonged to the Meridian Collective, a species that had governed galactic law for 12,000 years. Their translucent bodies pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed emotion better than any spoken word. Right now, Thylex glowed deep crimson, the color of extreme concern. The ambassador's 4 eye stalks surveyed the assembly before beginning. The translation matrices activated, converting Thylex's harmonic frequencies into thousands of languages simultaneously. Every being in the chamber would understand perfectly what was about to be said. "Esteemed colleagues of the Galactic Council," Thylex began, the harmonics reverberating through the chamber, "we convene today to address an unprecedented crisis. The human situation has escalated beyond our initial projections." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The Kulari delegation rustled their feather scales nervously. The Zephans, beings of pure energy, flickered with agitation. Even the ancient Korvax, who rarely showed emotion through their silicon-based forms, shifted in their alcoves. 73 galactic cycles ago, we made first contact with humanity, Thylex continued. They were a Category 2 civilization, barely capable of leaving their home planet. Following standard protocol, we offered them provisional membership in the Council. We shared basic technologies, fusion power, quantum communication, medical nanites. These gifts were meant to elevate them slowly over millennia to full galactic citizenship. The holographic display at the chamber's center activated, showing Earth as it had been during first contact. The blue-green world seemed so innocent, so contained. Then the image shifted, showing the current state of human expansion. Red markers appeared across the spiral arms of the galaxy, each one representing a human presence. In less than 100 cycles, humans have established themselves in 943 star systems, Thylex announced. The number sent shockwaves through the assembly. No species in recorded history has expanded this rapidly. Ambassador Kralex of the Vorthon Empire raised a crystalline appendage to speak. "Surely this is an error in your data, Ambassador Thylex. Such expansion would require technologies far beyond what we provided." Thylex's bioluminescence shifted to a pattern of reluctant confirmation. "That is correct, Ambassador Kralex. The humans did not simply use our gifts. They improved them. They combined them in ways we never anticipated. They asked questions we never thought to ask." The display changed, showing technical schematics that made several species gasp in recognition. Human ships that used hybrid drives combining 3 different alien technologies. Colonies that adapted to hostile environments using modified terraforming techniques no council species had imagined. Communication networks that somehow transmitted faster than quantum entanglement should allow. "But technological advancement is not our primary concern," Thylex continued. "The real threat is ideological." The chamber fell silent. Ideological contamination was the Council's greatest fear. For 12 millennia, they had maintained order through careful hierarchy. Each species knew its place, its role, its limitations. The system had brought peace and stability to a galaxy that had once been torn by endless wars. "Wherever humans go," Thylex explained, "they spread dangerous concepts. They speak of something they call universal rights. They claim that all sentient beings, regardless of species or origin, deserve equal treatment. They establish schools that teach anyone who wishes to learn. They share their technologies freely, asking nothing in return but friendship." The hegemon of Draconis, a massive reptilian being, slammed his tail against his platform. "This is madness. The galaxy functions because each species serves its designated purpose. The Meridians govern. The Draconians enforce. The Zephons compute. The Quillari harvest. If humans convince others to abandon their roles, chaos," finished Ambassador Thylex. "Complete social collapse. And the contamination has already begun." New images appeared. A Quillari worker colony that had declared independence after human traders introduced them to something called democracy. Young Vorthans questioning why only the eldest crystals could make decisions. Draconian soldiers refusing to suppress a rebellion because humans had convinced them the rebels had legitimate grievances. 17 species have sent delegations to human space in the last cycle alone, Thylex revealed. They seek to learn human governance methods. They want to establish free trade outside council regulation. Some have even begun to question the council's authority itself. The chamber erupted. Beings shouted, clicked, and vibrated their objections. The noise was deafening until the Nexus chamber's acoustic dampeners activated, forcing silence. Elder Zix of the Korvax spoke for the first time in 50 cycles. Their voice was like grinding stone, ancient and implacable. What do you propose, Ambassador Thylex? Thylex's entire form shifted to deep violet, the color of necessity. The humans must be outlawed completely, immediately. Any human found outside their home system will be detained. Any species harboring humans will face sanctions. Any technology exchange with humans will be considered treason against the Council. You speak of containment, said Ambassador Fenril of the Aquari, their liquid form rippling with concern. But can we contain an idea whose time has come? We must try, Thylex responded. The alternative is the end of our civilization as we know it. The vote was called. One by one, each species registered their decision. The tally board lit up with affirmatives. Only 3 species abstained. Notably, all 3 had recently established trade relations with humans. The motion passes, Thylex announced. By overwhelming majority, humanity is hereby declared an outlawed species. Enforcement begins immediately. But even as the decree was formalized, warning signals began flooding the Council's communication networks. Reports poured in from across the galaxy. Human ships were already evacuating from Council space. Human traders were closing their stations. Human diplomats were departing from every embassy they had known. Somehow the humans had known this was coming. Ambassador Thylex studied the reports with growing alarm. The human withdrawal was too organized, too coordinated. This wasn't a panicked retreat. This was a planned maneuver. Ambassador, an aide rushed forward, their carapace clicking with distress. We're receiving a transmission. It's broadcasting on every council frequency and every council language. Put it through, Thylex commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing a human figure. She appeared middle-aged by human standards, with silver streaking through her dark hair. She wore no uniform, no symbols of authority. She looked, Thylex thought, remarkably ordinary. Members of the Galactic Council, the human said, her voice calm and measured. I am Director Maria Santos of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We acknowledge your decree. We will comply with your demand that all humans withdraw from Council space. Relief flickered through the chamber. Perhaps this would be easier than anticipated. However, Santos continued, and that single word destroyed all sense of relief. We feel it necessary to inform you that over the past 73 cycles, approximately 8 million beings from various council species have requested and been granted asylum in human space. They came to us seeking freedom, seeking opportunity, seeking the right to determine their own futures. The chamber exploded again, but Santos continued speaking over the chaos. These beings are now citizens of human colonies. They have married into human families. They have started businesses, built homes, raised children. They are part of us now, and we will not abandon them. Nor will we force them to return to worlds where they were considered property or lesser beings. Thylex's bioluminescence flashed through a spectrum of colors: shock, anger, fear. You planned this. You've been planning this from the beginning. Santos seemed to look directly at Thylex, though that was impossible through a broadcast. Ambassador, we studied your history. We learned how your council responded to previous species that challenged the established order. The Nephilim, the Celestials, the Firstborn, all outlawed, all destroyed. So we prepared. We made friends. We shared our dreams of a galaxy where beings were judged not by their species, but by their character. And we found that we were not alone in wanting change. The transmission ended, replaced by a star map. But this wasn't a council map. This showed space from a different perspective. Huge swaths of the galaxy were marked in blue, human space. But more concerning were the areas marked in green, allied space. Species and systems that had chosen to stand with humanity. The green zones were everywhere. They surrounded council space. They controlled key hyperlane junctions. They included resource-rich systems the council economy depended on. By the void, whispered Ambassador Krillex, they've already won. The Revelation 3 cycles had passed since the decree of outlawing. The Nexus chamber convened again, but this time nearly a third of the seats were empty. Representatives from 17 species had failed to appear, their governments either in chaos or having quietly severed ties with the Council. Ambassador Thylax stood at the central platform again, but the confident authority that had marked the previous session was gone. The Meridian's bioluminescence flickered with exhaustion and uncertainty. Enforcement of the decree has proven challenging, Thylax began, the understatement echoing through the depleted chamber. Our peacekeeping fleets report widespread non-compliance. The holographic display activated, showing a draconian enforcement cruiser approaching a human colony ship just beyond Council space. The recording was from 2 days ago. The draconian commander's voice boomed across the communication channel. Human vessel, you are in violation of Council Decree 779. Prepare to be boarded. The human captain appeared on screen, a young man who looked barely adult by human standards. Draconian cruiser, we acknowledge your transmission. However, we are currently in neutral space outside Council jurisdiction. Additionally, our passenger manifest includes 47 Quilari refugees who have requested asylum. According to Council Law Section 9, Subsection 12, refugees cannot be forcibly returned to their systems of origin if they face persecution. The draconian commander had sputtered. There is no persecution in Council space. Would you like to explain that to the Quilari workers whose union leaders were imprisoned for requesting fair wages? The human captain had responded calmly. We have their testimonies recorded, witnessed by neutral observers. The recording showed the draconian cruiser holding position for several hours before eventually withdrawing. Similar scenes had played out hundreds of times across the galaxy. The humans are using our own laws against us, reported Admiral Krex of the Draconian Fleet Command, his scales dull with frustration. They cite regulations we had forgotten existed. They invoke treaties and precedents from thousands of cycles ago. Their legal scholars seem to know our laws better than we do. But the legal challenges were only the beginning. Ambassador Fenril of the Aquari rose to speak, their liquid form agitated. My people report massive disruptions in our agricultural sectors. The automated systems we purchased from human companies have stopped functioning. When we demanded explanations, the humans simply said that since we outlawed them, they could no longer provide technical support or software updates. Similar reports came from across Council space. Medical equipment that needed human-designed components to function, mining operations that relied on human-improved extraction techniques, communication networks that had integrated human encryption protocols. Decades of trade and technological exchange couldn't simply be severed without consequences. We anticipated economic disruption, Elder Zix of the Korvax noted. We did not anticipate the scale, but worse was yet to come. A junior aide rushed into the chamber, their 6 legs clicking frantically against the floor. Ambassadors! Priority transmission from the Outer Rim. The display shifted to show Governor Helax of the Rim territories, a Zephan whose energy form flickered with panic. Council members, I report complete administrative collapse in Sectors 7 through 15. Local populations have declared independence and established what they call democratic assemblies. They claim inspiration from human governmental models. Suppress them, commanded the hegemon of Draconis. With what forces? Helax responded desperately. Half our garrison troops have joined the rebels. They say they're tired of enforcing laws they had no voice in creating. The humans never fired a shot, never invaded, never threatened. They just talked to people. They listened to grievances. They offered alternatives. Thylax's form pulsed with deep purple, the color of dread. Show us the current territorial map. The display updated and gasps echoed through the chamber. The areas in green, systems aligned with humanity, had tripled. Entire sectors had simply walked away from Council authority. Trade routes were being redirected around Council space. New alliances were forming that excluded the traditional power structures entirely. We're not fighting a war, Ambassador Krillex observed quietly. We're witnessing an evolution, and we're the ones being selected against. A new transmission interrupted the session. Director Santos appeared again, but this time she wasn't alone. Standing beside her were beings from dozens of species. Many were recognized as former Council citizens who had been reported missing. Members of the Galactic Council, Santos began. We come to you with an offer. The galaxy is changing. The old hierarchies are crumbling not because we destroyed them, but because beings across the galaxy have realized they deserve better. You can continue to resist this change, to cling to your positions of authority, and watch as your influence diminishes day by day. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer, almost sympathetic. Or you can join us in building something new. A galactic community based on mutual respect, shared knowledge, and voluntary cooperation. Your species' unique gifts and perspectives are valuable, but they're valuable as contributions, not as mandates. One of the beings beside her stepped forward, a young Meridian, whose bioluminescence patterns were unlike any traditional configuration. I am Silex, formerly of the Meridian Collective. I speak now as a citizen of New Harmony, a colony where 16 species live as equals. My thoughts are my own. My choices are my own, and I have never been happier. The transmission continued with testimony from other beings. A draconian soldier who had become a teacher, a Quillari harvester who had invented a new form of art, a Vorthan crystal who had started a multi-species musical ensemble. Each spoke of freedom, of potential realized, of dreams they never knew they could have. This is propaganda, the hegemon of Draconis roared. They've been coerced. But even as he spoke, reports flooded in from Draconis itself. Young Draconians were questioning the warrior culture. They wanted to explore science, art, philosophy. They had been secretly communicating with human educational networks, learning about concepts their own society had never allowed them to explore. Elder Zik spoke again, their ancient voice heavy with the weight of millennia. We have lost, not to human weapons or human fleets, but to human ideas. And perhaps that is not a loss, but a transformation. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the ancient Korvax. For 12,000 cycles we maintained order through control, Zix continued. We told ourselves this was for the greater good. We convinced ourselves that freedom would bring chaos. But look at human space. Look at the colonies where species mingle freely. Is there chaos, or is there a vitality we had forgotten could exist? Thylex's form shifted through a range of colors. Resistance, acceptance, and finally curiosity. What are you suggesting, Elder? I suggest we consider that perhaps the humans were not a threat to galactic civilization. Perhaps they were its next stage of evolution, and perhaps it is time for the Council to evolve as well. The debate that followed was unlike any in Council history, not because it was heated. There had been many fierce debates, but because for the first time members began to speak not as representatives of their species, but as individuals. They shared doubts they had harbored for cycles. They admitted curiosities about human concepts of individual rights and freedoms. They wondered aloud what their species might achieve if given the chance to choose their own paths. Finally, Thylex called for a new vote. Not on containing humanity, but on opening formal dialogue about restructuring the Council itself. The vote wasn't unanimous. The hegemon of Draconis and a few others stormed out of the chamber. But the majority remained, and the majority voted yes. The last transmission from Director Santos was brief. We welcome your decision to engage in dialogue. Humanity never sought to destroy the Galactic Council. We sought to remind the galaxy that governance should serve the governed, not the other way around. We look forward to building a future together, as equals. As the session ended and representatives began to disperse, Thylex remained on the central platform. The Meridian's bioluminescence had shifted to a color rarely seen among their kind, the soft blue of hope mixed with uncertainty. A younger Meridian aide approached. Ambassador, what do we do now? Thylex considered the question. We do something the Council hasn't done in 12 millennia. We learn. We adapt, we grow. The humans have shown us that outlawing change only ensures you'll be left behind by it. The aide's own colors shifted with curiosity. Do you think we made the right choice? We made the only choice, Thylex replied. The humans understood something we had forgotten. Ideas once released cannot be contained. Freedom once tasted cannot be forgotten. They didn't conquer us. They simply reminded us that we too could choose to be free. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued, not through force or decree, but through billions of individual beings making individual choices. The Galactic Council had tried to outlaw humanity, but in truth, humanity had simply offered the galaxy a mirror, and the galaxy had finally seen what it could become. The age of rigid hierarchy was ending. The age of voluntary cooperation was beginning, and in schools across 1,000 worlds, young beings of every species learned the lesson that humans had carried to the stars. That freedom wasn't something to be feared, but something to be embraced. The council had outlawed humans. It was already too late. But perhaps it was exactly the right time.